I was reading in my favorite chair by the window when I heard Chloe's footsteps thundering down the hallway. Not her usual confident stride, but a panicked run that made the floorboards shake. My 22-year-old granddaughter burst into the living room, her face drained of all color, her chest heaving like she'd just sprinted a mile. "Grandma," she gasped, gripping the doorframe with white-knuckled hands. "We're leaving this house immediately. Don't argue with me." I set down my book, my heart already beginning to race. Chloe was studying environmental engineering at the university, working on her master's thesis about indoor air quality. She was brilliant, methodical, never prone to dramatics. If she looked this terrified, something was seriously wrong. "What on earth is going on?" I asked, standing up slowly. My knees protested, 68-year-old knees that had been giving me trouble lately. "They sealed the vents," Chloe said, her voice shaking. "All of them. Every single air vent in this house has been sealed shut. And Grandma," her voice broke, "there's carbon monoxide building up. The detector in your bedroom is fake. I tested it. It doesn't work." The words didn't make sense at first. Sealed vents, fake detector. "Chloe, sweetheart, I don't understand. Why would there's no time to explain?" She crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed my arm. "We need to leave right now. Get your purse, get your medication, and come with me. Please, Grandma, trust me." Something in her eyes, raw terror mixed with desperate urgency, made me move. I grabbed my purse from the side table, my pill organizer from the kitchen counter. Chloe practically dragged me toward the front door, her breathing still ragged. "My phone," I started to say. "Leave it," she said sharply. "Don't call anyone yet. Just come." We were in her Honda Civic, pulling away from my house on Sycamore Drive, before I could fully process what was happening. I watched my home of 41 years disappear in the side mirror of the Cape Cod-style house that my husband Vincent and I had bought when we were young and ambitious, where we'd raised our son Marcus, where I'd lived alone for the past 4 years since Vincent's death. "Chloe," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "tell me what you found." She white-knuckled the steering wheel, her eyes darting between the road and the rearview mirror like she expected someone to follow us. "I came over to check your HVAC system. You remember? You said you'd been feeling tired and getting headaches." I did remember. For the past 2 months, I'd been exhausted all the time, fighting persistent headaches that wouldn't respond to medication. I'd mentioned it to Chloe during our weekly Sunday dinner 3 weeks ago. "I thought it was just age," I said quietly. "It's not age, it's carbon monoxide poisoning." Chloe's voice cracked. "Grandma, someone modified your heating system to pump carbon monoxide into your house. They sealed every vent so it couldn't escape. They replaced your CO detector with a dummy unit that looks real but doesn't actually detect anything. If you'd gone to sleep tonight, you would have died." The words hit me like a physical blow. Died. Someone had tried to kill me. Who would? But even as I asked, cold certainty settled in my stomach. "Marcus." Chloe's jaw clenched. "Dad and Veronica. I found the invoices in the garage. Work orders signed by Dad dated over the past 3 months. HVAC modifications and ventilation updates. But what they actually did was seal you in with a death trap. Marcus. My son. The baby I'd rocked to sleep, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose college education I'd paid for. Marcus had tried to kill me. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Hotel. The Courtyard on Route 7. I'm checking us in under my name, and then I'm calling the police." She glanced at me, her eyes red-rimmed. "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I'm so sorry it's him." We drove the rest of the way in silence. My mind reeled, trying to make sense of it. Marcus was 43 years old, a successful HVAC engineer at Morrison Climate Systems. He'd been making good money for years. Why would he need to kill me? But even as I thought it, I knew the answer. Money. It always came back to money. We checked into the hotel, a standard room with 2 queen beds. Chloe insisted on paying cash, said we needed to be careful. Once we were inside with the door locked and the chain engaged, she finally let herself break down. She collapsed onto the bed and sobbed, her whole body shaking. I sat beside her and pulled her into my arms, the way I had when she was little and the world had hurt her. "It's okay," I whispered, stroking her hair. "You saved my life, sweetheart. You were so brave. I almost didn't check," she gasped between sobs. "I almost waited until tomorrow. If I'd waited, you'd be dead. But you didn't wait. You saved me." She cried for a long time while I held her, my own tears falling silently. Finally, when her sobs had quieted 2 hiccups, she sat up and wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I need to show you something," she said, pulling out her phone. I took pictures, evidence. She showed me photo after photo. The HVAC system with its unauthorized modifications, pipes rerouted, vents sealed with professional-grade sealant, a new valve installed that looked completely legitimate but was actually designed to redirect exhaust back into the house. The carbon monoxide detector that looked exactly like the real thing but had no actual sensor inside. The work orders she'd found in my garage, signed by Marcus Harrison, dated over the past 3 months. "This is sophisticated," Chloe said, her voice steadier now, slipping into her analytical engineer mode. "This isn't amateur work. Dad designed this system specifically to create a slow carbon monoxide buildup. Not fast enough to trigger immediate symptoms, but steady enough to kill you within a few months. By the time you died, the CO levels would have dissipated enough that an autopsy might not catch it. And even if they did, it would look like a faulty heating system, an accident." "How did you figure it out?" "Your symptoms. Chronic fatigue, headaches, difficulty concentrating. Those are classic signs of low-level CO poisoning. When you mentioned them, I got worried. I know you're careful about maintenance, so I couldn't understand why your system would be malfunctioning. I came over to check, and double quotes." She swallowed hard. "The modifications were hidden but not well enough. Dad thought no one would look. He didn't count on me actually climbing into the crawlspace and tracing the ductwork. My phone, the one I'd left behind, started buzzing in my mind. By now, Marcus would have realized I was gone. He'd be calling, texting, panicking. "We need to call the police," I said. Chloe nodded and dialed 911. "My name is Chloe Harrison," she said when the dispatcher answered. "I'm at the Courtyard Hotel on Route 7, room 318. I need police here immediately. I have evidence that my father and stepmother have been attempting to murder my grandmother through carbon monoxide poisoning. I removed her from the residence approximately 40 minutes ago. She's safe, but we need protection. They're going to realize she's gone." The dispatcher asked questions. Chloe answered calmly, professionally, explaining what she'd found and why we'd fled. "I sat on the bed, listening to my granddaughter save my life for the second time in an hour. Police are on their way," the dispatcher said. "Stay in your room with the door locked. Don't open it for anyone except uniformed officers. Do you feel safe right now? But my father is going to come looking for us. He's an HVAC engineer. He knows about building systems. He's intelligent and methodical, and he's going to be desperate. Officers will be there in less than 10 minutes. Stay on the line with me." 8 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. "Police. Riverside County Sheriff's Department." Chloe looked through the peephole, verified the uniforms, and opened the door to reveal to deputies a woman in her 40s and a younger man, both with serious expressions. "I'm Deputy Rachel Morrison," the woman said. "This is Deputy Chen. You called about attempted murder." "Yes," Chloe said. "My grandmother, Barbara Harrison? Someone modified her HVAC system to poison her with carbon monoxide. I have photographs, work orders, and physical evidence." "Yes," Chloe said. Deputy Morrison's expression hardened. "Show me." For the next hour, Chloe walked the deputies through everything she'd found. She showed them the photographs, explained the modifications in technical detail, displayed the work orders signed by Marcus. She described my symptoms, the timeline, the fake carbon monoxide detector. "This is highly sophisticated," Deputy Morrison said, scrolling through the photos on Chloe's phone. "Your father is an HVAC engineer." "Yes, he works for Morrison Climate Systems. He has 20 years of experience in residential and commercial systems. He knows exactly what he's doing. And you're certain these modifications were designed to kill your grandmother, not just negligence or incompetence?" Chloe's eyes flashed. "I'm a graduate student in environmental engineering. My thesis is on indoor air quality and ventilation systems. I know what negligence looks like, and I know what murder looks like. This is murder." Deputy Chen made notes. "Mrs. Harrison, how have you been feeling lately?" "Tired," I said quietly. "Constant headaches, dizzy sometimes, difficulty concentrating. I thought it was just age, or maybe grief. My husband died 4 years ago." "Those are textbook symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning," Deputy Morrison said. "Deputy Chen," called the fire marshal, "we need someone at this residence immediately to document the system and test for CO levels and get a detective here. This is attempted homicide. My phone, which I'd left behind, must have been ringing nonstop, because exactly 1 hour and 7 minutes after we'd fled, there was aggressive pounding on the hotel room door. Mom, open this door right now." Marcus's voice, sharp with panic and anger. The deputies immediately moved into position. Deputy Morrison gestured for us to get behind them. Deputy Chen opened the door, his hand resting on his service weapon. "Sir, step back," he said firmly. Marcus stood in the hallway, his face flushed, his expensive suit rumpled. Veronica, his wife, stood behind him, her arms crossed, her expression cold. Marcus was 43, tall and broad-shouldered like his father had been, with Vincent's dark hair now threading with gray. Veronica was 38, blonde and polished. A real estate agent who'd always been more interested in my property portfolio than in me. "What's going on here?" Marcus demanded. "That's my mother. Why are there police? Mr. Harrison, I need you to calm down and step back. Deputy Chen said. I will not calm down. Someone needs to explain why my mother was taken from her home without telling me. Why my daughter, he glared at Chloe, kidnapped her own grandmother. I didn't kidnap anyone, Chloe said, her voice cold. I saved her life. From what? Her own confusion? Mom, what has Chloe been telling you? You're not? Well, you've been so forgetful lately, so confused. We've been worried about you. There it was. The narrative, the gaslighting. I'd been forgetful and confused so that when I died, people would nod sympathetically and say, poor Barbara, she was declining. I'm not confused, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. And I'm not forgetful. What I am is being slowly poisoned in my own home by my son and his wife. Marcus's face went through a fascinating range of emotions: shock, anger, fear, and finally calculated concern. Mom, that's crazy talk. You're not being poisoned. You're just sick. We need to get you to a doctor, get you some help. Mr. Harrison, Deputy Morrison interrupted. We have evidence that suggests your mother SVAC system has been deliberately modified to create carbon monoxide buildup. Work orders with your signature. Photographs of the modifications. Do you have any comment on that? Marcus's eyes darted to Chloe. You went into my mother's house without permission. You tampered with her systems. That's breaking and entering. That's I have a key, Chloe said coldly. Grandma gave it to me years ago. I came to check on her because she'd been complaining about symptoms consistent with CO poisoning. What I found was a deliberate attempt to murder her. That's insane. I would never hurt my mother. Then explain the sealed vents, Chloe shot back. Explain the fake carbon monoxide detector. Explain why every single modification you made to Grandma's system would result in co-buildup. Explain it, Dad. I'd love to hear your technical justification. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I was updating her system, making it more efficient. If something went wrong, it was an accident, not. Stop talking, Veronica said sharply, grabbing his arm. Don't say another word. We need a lawyer. Deputy Morrison's expression grew grimmer. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, we're going to need you to come down to the station for questioning. Right now, we're treating this as an attempted homicide investigation. You can't be serious, Veronica said, her polished facade cracking. This is ridiculous. Barbara is an old woman who's clearly being manipulated by her granddaughter. Chloe has always been jealous of Marcus, always trying to turn Barbara against us, ma'am. I'm going to need you to stop talking, Deputy Morrison said. Anything you say can and will be used against you. I suggest you follow your own advice and contact an attorney. Marcus's face had gone pale. He looked at me, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes: calculation, fear, and underneath it all a cold blankness that chilled me to my core. Mom, he said, his voice softening into that reasonable tone he used when he wanted something. Please, this is a misunderstanding. I love you. I would never hurt you. Chloe has it all wrong. Let me explain. Explain to the detectives, I said quietly. Explain to them why your modifications would have killed me. Explain why you sealed the vents. Explain why the carbon monoxide detector you installed doesn't actually work. You're confused, Mom. You're sick. We can get you help. The only thing I'm sick from is carbon monoxide poisoning, I said, my voice hardening. Poisoning that you caused. Get out, Marcus. I don't want to see you. His mask finally slipped. His face twisted with anger, and for just a second I saw pure hatred in his eyes. You're going to regret this. That money should be mine. I'm your son. I deserve. Mr. Harrison, that's enough, Deputy Chen said. You and your wife need to leave now. If you contact Mrs. Harrison or Chloe Harrison, you'll be arrested for witness intimidation. Marcus and Veronica were escorted out of the hotel, their protests fading down the hallway. When the door finally closed, I collapsed onto the bed, my whole body shaking. Chloe sat beside me and took my hand. It's over, Grandma. You're safe now, but it wasn't over. It was only beginning. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. I am Barbara Harrison, and I need you to understand who I was before my son tried to kill me. I was born Barbara Chen in 1957, the daughter of Chinese immigrants who owned a small restaurant in San Francisco's Chinatown. My parents worked 16-hour days, saving every penny, believing in the American dream with an almost religious fervor. They taught me that hard work, education, and integrity were the only things that mattered. I graduated from UC Berkeley in 1979 with a degree in business administration. That's where I met Vincent Harrison, a civil engineer with kind eyes and calloused hands who was the first person in his family to go to college. We married 6 months after graduation and broke, and absolutely certain we could build something together. And we did. Vincent got a job with the city planning department. I went to work for Henderson Property Management, starting as a secretary and working my way up to property manager within 5 years. We lived in a tiny apartment, drove used cars, and saved every spare dollar. When Marcus was born in 1982, I took 3 months off and then went back to work. We couldn't afford for me to stay home, and honestly, I didn't want to. I loved my son, but I also loved working, loved building something, loved the challenge of turning struggling properties into profitable investments. Vincent and I bought our first rental property when Marcus was 2, a rundown duplex in a questionable neighborhood that we got for $45,000. Vincent handled the renovations himself, working evenings and weekends. I handled the business side, finding tenants, managing the finances, dealing with the bank. We reinvested every dollar of profit. By the time Marcus started kindergarten, we owned 4 properties. By the time he started high school, we owned 18. I got my real estate license when Marcus was 10, started my own property management company when he was 15. By the time Vincent retired at 62, our portfolio was worth $2.8 million and generating steady passive income. We'd built it together. 40 years of hard work, smart investments, and careful management. We'd started with nothing and created wealth through sheer determination. Marcus had every advantage we'd never had. Private schools, summer camps, college tuition fully paid. We gave him opportunities, but we also taught him more. Tried to teach him our values. Work hard, be honest. Money is a tool, not a goal. But somewhere along the way, Marcus learned different lessons. He was brilliant, always had been. Straight A's, full scholarship to MIT for engineering. He graduated with honors, got recruited by Morrison Climate Systems, and quickly rose through the ranks. By 30, he was a senior HVAC engineer making 6 figures. By 40, he was a division manager. He married his college girlfriend Melissa when he was 25. They had Chloe 2 years later. Melissa was sweet, artistic, a kindergarten teacher who reminded me of my own mother, hardworking and kind. Marcus seemed happy, but the marriage fell apart when Chloe was 15. Marcus had an affair with Veronica Nash, a real estate agent he'd met through a client. The divorce was bitter. Melissa got custody of Chloe, and Marcus married Veronica 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Vincent and I didn't approve, but we kept our mouths shut. Marcus was our son, and we wanted to support him even when we disagreed with his choices. That was our first mistake. Veronica was different from Melissa in every way. She was polished, ambitious, obsessed with status and appearances. She drove a BMW, wore designer clothes, and lived in a house that was mortgaged to the hilt. She looked down on Vincent's blue-collar background, made snide comments about my little rental properties, and pushed Marcus to pursue wealth instead of stability. Marcus changed after he married her. He started making risky investments, flipping houses during the boom years, leveraging himself to buy properties he couldn't afford. He'd come to us asking for advice, then get angry when we told him to be more conservative. "You're too cautious," he'd say. "You could have 10 times what you have if you'd been willing to take risks." "We could also have nothing if we'd gambled wrong," Vincent would reply calmly. "We built something sustainable. That's what matters." But Marcus didn't want sustainable. He wanted spectacular. The 2008 financial crisis nearly destroyed them. Marcus and Veronica lost everything. 3 investment properties that went into foreclosure. $200,000 in debt, their savings wiped out. They came to us desperate, asking for $300,000 to save their investments. Vincent looked at their paperwork for 2 hours, then shook his head. "This money won't save you. It'll just delay the inevitable. You need to declare bankruptcy and start fresh." Marcus had exploded. "You have millions sitting in properties you don't even use. You're retired, living off passive income, and you won't help your own son." "We worked 40 years for this," I'd said quietly. "We can't throw it away on bad investments. So, that's it. You're going to watch me lose everything?" "You lost it yourself," Vincent had said, his voice sad. "By making risky choices and living beyond your means. We love you, Marcus, but we can't save you from your own decisions." Marcus hadn't spoken to us for 18 months after that. When he finally came back, it was different. Colder, he'd visit once a month. Always with Veronica, always asking pointed questions about our properties, our finances, our estate plan. The visits felt like audits, not family time. Chloe, meanwhile, was pulling away from Marcus and Veronica. She'd chosen to live with her mother full-time at 16, despite Marcus's objections. She'd chosen to study engineering at the state university instead of going to MIT like Marcus wanted. She'd rejected everything Marcus tried to push her toward, and she'd gotten close to Vincent and me. She'd spend weekends at our house helping Vincent with property maintenance, asking me about business management. She was brilliant like her father, but had her mother's kindness and work ethic. Vincent adored her. "That girl's got what Marcus lost," he'd say. "She understands that character matters more than money." When Vincent had his first stroke 4 years ago, Chloe was the one who came to the hospital every day. Marcus visited twice, both times with Veronica, both times asking about Vincent's wishes and whether he'd updated his will. Vincent survived the stroke but was diminished by it. His sharp mind stayed intact but his body weakened. He couldn't do the physical work anymore, couldn't manage the properties the way he had. I took over everything while caring for him at home. Marcus's visits became more frequent during Vincent's illness. He'd arrive with Veronica and they'd stay for exactly an hour, making concerned noises about Vincent's health and my stress levels. "You're taking on too much, Mom," Marcus would say. "You should sell some properties. Simplify your life. Veronica and I could help you manage the business side." "I'm fine," I'd say. "I've been managing these properties for 30 years. I don't need help." "But what if something happens to you? Have you thought about succession planning? About making sure everything transfers smoothly? Always back to money? Always back to the properties, the estate, the inheritance." Vincent died 3.5 years ago, peacefully in his sleep after a second massive stroke. Chloe held one hand, I held the other. His last words were, "Take care of our girl, both our girls." He meant Chloe and me, not Marcus. Marcus came to the funeral with Veronica, both in expensive black clothing. They stood at the grave looking appropriately somber, but I saw Veronica checking her phone during the eulogy. I saw Marcus calculating, his eyes distant. After the funeral, Marcus cornered me at the reception. "Mom, we need to talk about Dad's estate, the properties, the business. We should probably sell everything and invest the cash more efficiently." "Your father left everything to me?" I said quietly. "His will was very clear. The properties stay with me until I die." "But Mom, that doesn't make sense. You're 65 years old, alone, trying to manage 22 rental properties. You need help?" "Let Veronica and me know," I said firmly. "These properties are my life's work, your father's life's work. I'm keeping them." Marcus's jaw had clenched. "Fine, but when you're ready to be reasonable, we'll talk." Over the next 3 years, Marcus and Veronica ramped up their campaign. They'd visit and comment on how tired I looked, how forgetful I seemed. They'd suggest I was taking on too much, that I should consider assisted living, that I should simplify my finances, and they'd started telling other people I was declining. I'd run into old friends who'd ask with concern how I was. Coping with the confusion, or whether I'd considered getting help with basic tasks, lies that Marcus and Veronica had been spreading, building a narrative of incompetence. 6 months ago, Marcus had offered to update my HVAC system. "The furnace is 20 years old. Mom, it's inefficient and probably dangerous. Let me install a new system at cost. Family discount." I should have said no. But it seemed like an olive branch, a chance to rebuild our relationship. And honestly, the furnace was old. It made sense to upgrade. "Thank you," I'd said. "That's very generous." Marcus had smiled that charming, reasonable smile he'd always had. "Of course, Mom, you're my mother. I want to take care of you." But he didn't want to take care of me. He wanted to kill me. He'd spent 6 months modifying my HVAC system, making small changes each visit. Sealing vents, rerouting pipes, installing the fake carbon monoxide detector, building a death trap one piece at a time. And I'd let him into my house, trusted him, believed he loved me. That was my second mistake. Now, sitting in this hotel room with Chloe, I understood the full scope of my son's betrayal. He'd been planning this for months, maybe years, slowly poisoning me, building a narrative of my incompetence, positioning himself to inherit everything when I died in what would appear to be a tragic accident. "Grandma." Chloe's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Are you okay?" "No," I said honestly. "But I will be, because I was Barbara Harrison, daughter of immigrants who'd built something from nothing. Wife of Vincent Harrison, who'd taught me that integrity mattered more than profit. Mother of Marcus Harrison, who'd lost his way so completely that he'd tried to murder his own mother. And I was going to make damn sure he paid for it." The detective arrived at 11:47 p.m. His name was Richard Foster. A man in his 50s with gray hair, tired eyes, and the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much human ugliness. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm Detective Foster with the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. I need to ask you some questions about what happened tonight." For the next 2 hours, I told him everything. My relationship with Marcus, the deterioration after 2008, his marriage to Veronica, the years of financial pressure and implied expectations about inheritance, the offer to upgrade my HVAC system, my symptoms over the past 2 months, Chloe's discovery. Detective Foster took meticulous notes. "And you never suspected that your son might be trying to harm you?" "No," I said quietly. "I knew he wanted my money, but I never thought he'd." My voice broke. "He's my son. I carried him for 9 months. I raised him. How could I suspect he'd try to murder me?" Unfortunately, Elder abuse by family members is more common than people think, Detective Foster said grimly. Financial exploitation, physical abuse, neglect and, yes, sometimes murder. Adult children who feel entitled to their parents' assets, who see their parents as obstacles to wealth. It's ugly, but it happens. He turned to Chloe. Tell me exactly what you found. Chloe walked him through the evidence again, this time with even more technical detail. She explained how the modified HVAC system would create carbon monoxide buildup, how the sealed vents would trap the gas, how the fake detector would prevent any warning. She showed him the work orders, the photographs, her own measurements and calculations. This is first-degree attempted murder, Detective Foster said. Premeditated, carefully planned, sophisticated. Your father has HVAC engineering credentials. He's a senior division manager at Morrison Climate Systems, Chloe said. 20 years of experience in residential and commercial HVAC design. He knows exactly what he's doing. And your stepmother, Veronica's a real estate agent. She handles property sales, deals with estates. She knows the value of Grandma's portfolio. Detective Foster made more notes. Motive is clear financial gain. Your grandmother's estate is worth how much? Approximately $3.4 million, I said. 22 rental properties across 3 counties. Investments, savings, life insurance. Marcus is my only child. Under my current will, he inherits everything. That's substantial motive, and your granddaughter wouldn't inherit. I have a separate trust fund from Grandpa, Chloe said. $320,000 accessible when I turn 25. It's completely separate from Grandma's estate. So your father knew that even if he removed you from the picture, he'd still be the primary beneficiary. Yes, Chloe said, her voice tight. I was never a financial threat to him. I was just an obstacle to his plan, because I was paying attention to Grandma's health. Detective Foster leaned back in his chair. Here's what's going to happen. We have a forensic team at your residence right now, Mrs. Harrison. They're documenting the HVAC modifications, testing for carbon monoxide levels, collecting evidence. We'll also be getting a warrant for your son's work records, his personal files. Any communications between him and his wife regarding your estate? What about Marcus and Veronica? I asked. Are they being arrested? We brought them in for questioning tonight, but we had to release them. We don't have enough evidence yet for an arrest warrant. The modifications you described are suspicious, but your son could argue they were legitimate repairs that went wrong. We need to prove intent. The sealed vents prove intent, Chloe said sharply. There's no legitimate reason to seal every single ventilation point in a house while rerouting furnace exhaust back into the living space. That's murder, not negligence. I agree with you, Detective Foster said. But we need to build an airtight case. That means forensic analysis of the system, expert testimony about whether these modifications could possibly be accidental, financial records showing motive, and ideally, communications showing planning and intent. How long will that take? I asked. Days, 2 weeks, depending on what we find. In the meantime, I'm recommending you stay away from your residence. We're going to post it as a crime scene, and I'm strongly suggesting you retain an attorney immediately. I have an attorney, I said. Patricia Hendricks. She handled my husband's estate. Call her first thing in the morning. You're going to need legal protection and fast. Your son and daughter-in-law are going to fight this, and they're going to try to discredit both of you. He was right. My phone, which Chloe had retrieved from my house during the police investigation, had 37 missed calls. 23 from Marcus, 14 from Veronica. The voicemails ranged from concerned mom, please call me, I'm worried too angry, this is ridiculous. You're being manipulated to threatening if you don't call me back immediately. I'm filing for emergency conservatorship. They were going to try to have me declared incompetent. They're already building their counter-narrative, I told Detective Foster. They've been telling people for months that I'm confused, forgetful, declining. Now they'll say Chloe has manipulated me, that I'm not thinking clearly, that the modifications were legitimate and I've misunderstood. That's why we need medical documentation, Detective Foster said. I want you to see a doctor tomorrow. Get a complete cognitive assessment, a physical exam, and a blood test for carbon monoxide levels. We need proof that you're fully competent and that you were being poisoned at 2 a.m. Detective Foster finally left. Chloe and I sat in the hotel room, exhausted but unable to sleep. I can't believe Dad did this, Chloe said quietly. I mean, I saw the evidence. I found it myself. But I still can't believe he's capable of murder. Neither can I admitted. I keep thinking I must have missed something, some sign, some warning. How do you raise a child for 43 years and never see that he's capable of this? Maybe we did see it, Chloe said slowly. After 2008, when he blamed you and Grandpa for not saving him, the way he talked about money, like he deserved it more than the people who earned it. The affair with Veronica, the divorce from Mom. Maybe we just didn't want to believe what we were seeing. She was probably right. The signs had been their entitlement, greed, lack of empathy for others' struggles. But he was my son. I'd convinced myself he was just going through a hard time, that he'd grow out of it. That underneath he was still the sweet boy who'd once brought me dandelions and called them flowers. But that boy was gone if he'd ever really existed. I called Patricia Hendricks at 8 a.m. She answered on the second ring, her voice sharp with alarm when she heard the situation. Barbara, my God, you need a criminal attorney immediately. I'm going to refer you to someone who handles elder abuse cases. Her name is Sharon Martinez, and she's the best in the state. I'll call her right now, get you an appointment today. Thank you, Patricia and Barbara. Change your will immediately. If something happens to you before this case is resolved, Marcus cannot inherit. Call me this afternoon. We'll draw up a new will and get it notarized by end of business today. Sharon Martinez met us at her office at 1 p.m. She was a woman, in her early 50s, with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that assessed everything with clinical precision. Mrs. Harrison, show me everything you have, she said without preamble. Chloe displayed the photographs, the work orders, her technical analysis. I provided the timeline, the medical history, the financial information. Sharon asked sharp, incisive questions, taking notes on a legal pad. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of attempted murder I've seen, she said finally. Your son had motive, opportunity, and the technical expertise to execute a sophisticated murder plot. The evidence is substantial, but we need to be prepared for their defense strategy, which is, I asked. They're going to argue that you're incompetent due to age or carbon monoxide poisoning. They're going to claim the modifications were legitimate repairs and any problems were accidental. They're going to say Chloe has manipulated you to secure her own financial advantage. And they're going to try to paint Marcus as a loving son who's being falsely accused by a vindictive mother and daughter. But the evidence is one thing. Narrative is another. Juries are human. They don't want to believe that a successful, educated man would murder his own mother. They'll look for any alternative explanation. Our job is to make that impossible. How? First, medical documentation. You're seeing Dr. Raymond Lee at 3 p.m. today. He's a geriatric specialist who does cognitive assessments for elder abuse cases. He'll test you thoroughly and document that you're fully competent. He'll also do blood work to check for carbon monoxide in your system. Will there still be CO in my blood? I asked. It's been over 12 hours since Chloe got me out of the house. How long will that take? I asked. Days, 2 weeks, depending on what we find. In the meantime, I'm recommending you stay away from your residence. We're going to post it as a crime scene, and I'm strongly suggesting you retain an attorney immediately. I have an attorney, I said. Patricia Hendricks. She handled my husband's estate. Call her first thing in the morning. You're going to need legal protection, and fast. Your son and daughter-in-law are going to fight this, and they're going to try to discredit both of you. He was right. My phone, which Chloe had retrieved from my house during the police investigation, had 37 missed calls, 23 from Marcus, 14 from Veronica. The voicemails ranged from, "Concerned mom, please call me. I'm worried, too angry, this is ridiculous. You're being manipulated," to threatening, "If you don't call me back immediately, I'm filing for emergency conservatorship." Conservatorship? They were going to try to have me declared incompetent? They're already building their counter-narrative, I told Detective Foster. They've been telling people for months that I'm confused, forgetful, declining. Now they'll say Chloe has manipulated me, that I'm not thinking clearly, that the modifications were legitimate, and I've misunderstood. That's why we need medical documentation, Detective Foster said. I want you to see a doctor tomorrow. Get a complete cognitive assessment, a physical exam, and a blood test for carbon monoxide levels. We need proof that you're fully competent and that you were being poisoned. At 2 a.m., Detective Foster finally left. Chloe and I sat in the hotel room, exhausted but unable to sleep. I can't believe Dad did this, Chloe said quietly. I mean, I saw the evidence. I found it myself, but I still can't believe he's capable of murder. Neither can I admitted. I keep thinking I must have missed something. Some sign, some warning. How do you raise a child for 43 years and never see that he's capable of this? Maybe we did see it, Chloe said slowly. After 2008, when he blamed you and Grandpa for not saving him? The way he talked about money, like he deserved it more than the people who earned it. The affair with Veronica, the divorce from Mom. Maybe we just didn't want to believe what we were seeing. She was probably right. The signs had been their entitlement, greed, lack of empathy for others' struggles, but he was my son. I'd convinced myself he was just going through a hard time, that he'd grow out of it, that underneath he was still the sweet boy who'd once brought me dandelions and called them flowers. But that boy was gone, if he'd ever really existed. I called Patricia Hendricks at 8 a.m. She answered on the second ring, her voice sharp with alarm when she heard the situation. Barbara, my God, You need a criminal attorney immediately. I'm going to refer you to someone who handles elder abuse cases. Her name is Sharon Martinez, and she's the best in the state. I'll call her right now. Get you an appointment today. Thank you, Patricia. And Barbara, change your will. Immediately if something happens to you before this case is resolved, Marcus cannot inherit. Call me this afternoon. We'll draw up a new will and get it notarized by end of business today. Sharon Martinez met us at her office at 1 p.m. She was a woman in her early 50s, with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that assessed everything with clinical precision. Mrs. Harrison, show me everything you have, she said without preamble. Chloe displayed the photographs, the work orders, her technical analysis. I provided the timeline, the medical history, the financial information. Sharon asked sharp, incisive questions, taking notes on a legal pad. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of attempted murder I've seen, she said finally. Your son had motive, opportunity, and the technical expertise to execute a sophisticated murder plot. The evidence is substantial, but we need to be prepared for their defense strategy. Which is? I asked. They're going to argue that you're incompetent due to age or carbon monoxide poisoning. They're going to claim the modifications were legitimate repairs and any problems were accidental. They're going to say Chloe has manipulated you to secure her own financial advantage. And they're going to try to paint Marcus as a loving son who's being falsely accused by a vindictive mother and daughter. But the evidence is one thing. Narrative is another. Juries are human. They don't want to believe that a successful, educated man would murder his own mother. They'll look for any alternative explanation. Our job is to make that impossible. How? First, medical documentation. You're seeing Dr. Raymond Lee at 3 p.m. today. He's a geriatric specialist who does cognitive assessments for elder abuse cases. He'll test you thoroughly and document that you're fully competent. He'll also do blood work to check for carbon monoxide in your system. Will there still be CO in my blood? I asked. It's been over 12 hours since Chloe got me out of the house. Carbon monoxide has a half-life of about 5 hours in the bloodstream with normal oxygen levels, Chloe said. But chronic exposure leaves other markers, carboxyhemoglobin levels, cellular damage. The blood test should still show evidence of poisoning. Second, Sharon continued, we're hiring a private investigator. Someone who can dig into Marcus and Veronica's finances, communications background. If they've done this before, if there are other victims, we need to know. You think Marcus has killed before? The thought made my stomach turn. I think Marcus is very good at what he does, Sharon said grimly. This level of sophistication suggests experience. The fake carbon monoxide detector, the gradual buildup, the narrative of your incompetence. This was carefully planned over months. That kind of planning often indicates prior practice. His first wife, I said suddenly. Melissa, she died 2 years ago. Brain aneurysm, they said. Sudden and unexpected. Sharon's eyes sharpened. How old was she? 41? Healthy, active, no history of health problems. One day she just ... collapsed. Marcus and Veronica were the ones who found her, and who inherited. Marcus did. Melissa's life insurance, her retirement accounts. Chloe was in college at the time, and the policies named Marcus as beneficiary from when they were married. Melissa had never updated them. How much? I don't know exactly, but Melissa worked as a school principal. She would have had decent life insurance through the district, probably $300,000 or more. Sharon made rapid notes. We need to look into that. A sudden aneurysm in a healthy 41-year-old woman with Marcus as the primary beneficiary? That's suspicious. You think he killed Melissa too? Chloe's voice was barely a whisper. I think we need to investigate every sudden or unexpected death in Marcus Harrison's orbit, Sharon said, starting with his first wife. The examination with Dr. Lee was thorough and exhausting. He tested my memory, my reasoning skills, my ability to process information. He asked about my medical history, my daily routines, my management of my properties and finances. Mrs. Harrison, your cognitive function is excellent, Dr. Lee said at the end of 2 hours. You show no signs of dementia, confusion, or any impairment that would affect your capacity to make decisions. Your memory is sharp, your reasoning is sound, and your executive function is well above average for your age. What about the carbon monoxide? I asked. Your blood work shows elevated carboxyhemoglobin levels, not acutely dangerous now, but consistent with chronic low-level exposure over weeks or months. Combined with your symptoms, this strongly suggests carbon monoxide poisoning. If you'd stayed in that environment much longer, the outcome would have been fatal. He provided a written report documenting all of this, medical proof that I was competent and that I was being poisoned. The private investigator Sharon hired was a woman named Catherine Wells. She was in her 60s, a former FBI agent who specialized in financial crimes and elder abuse cases. I've seen this pattern before, Catherine said when we met at Sharon's office the next day. Adult children who view their parents as 18. When the parents won't give them access to the money, they start planning elimination. The sophistication of this case suggests your son has done this before, or has researched similar cases extensively. Can you find out? I asked. I'm already working on it. I'm looking into Melissa Harrison's death. Any other suspicious incidents in Marcus's past? His financial history? His communications? I've also started researching Veronica. Sometimes the spouse is the driving force, sometimes they're just complicit. I need to know which dynamic we're dealing with here. Over the next 2 weeks, the investigation expanded. The forensic analysis of my house came back, damning the HVAC system had been deliberately modified to create lethal carbon monoxide buildup. The vents had been professionally sealed. The detector was indeed a fake. The fire marshal's report concluded, these modifications could not have been accidental. They represent a deliberate attempt to create a toxic environment that would result in death. Marcus's work records from Morrison Climate Systems showed no legitimate business reason for the modifications. In fact, several of the techniques he'd used violated building codes and company standards. When the company was contacted by investigators, Marcus was immediately placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The financial records told their own story. Marcus and Veronica were $410,000 in debt. Their house was in foreclosure. They had maxed out credit cards, unpaid bills, and a history of living well beyond their means. They were financially desperate. And then Catherine Wells found Melissa. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice tight with controlled anger. Barbara, I need you to sit down. I found something about Melissa Harrison's death. What did you find? Melissa didn't die of a natural aneurysm. She died of a cerebral air embolism and air bubble in the bloodstream that traveled to her brain. It can look like an aneurysm on autopsy if the medical examiner isn't looking specifically for injection sites. My blood ran cold. Someone injected air into her veins. That's the most common way to create an air embolism. A syringe full of air injected into a vein can cause a fatal bubble in the heart or brain within minutes. It's a known murder method, and it's hard to detect if the injection site is small or in an inconspicuous location. Marcus was an EMT in college, I said. The memory surfacing. He took emergency medical training courses. He knows about injections, about veins, about medical procedures. That's in my report. But here's what really interests me. Melissa changed her will 3 days before she died. She removed Marcus as beneficiary and named Chloe instead. Marcus didn't know the attorney was supposed to meet with Melissa to finalize the changes. But she died before the new will could be signed. So, Marcus inherited under the old will, I said slowly, even though Melissa intended to cut him out. Exactly. If she'd lived 3 more days, Marcus would have gotten nothing. Instead, he got $340,000 from her life insurance and retirement accounts. That's not coincidence, I whispered. No, Catherine agreed. It's not. I'm working with the Portland Police Department to reopen Melissa Harrison's death investigation. They're exhuming her body for a new autopsy, specifically looking for injection sites and evidence of air embolism. My son, my Marcus, he'd killed his first wife for money, and then he'd tried to kill me. How many people had I raised? 3 weeks after Chloe saved my life, Marcus and Veronica were arrested. Detective Foster called me at 6:30 a.m. with the news. We have enough for an arrest warrant. Attempted murder, conspiracy, elder abuse, and financial exploitation. We're bringing them in this morning. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Just a deep, aching sorrow that it had come to this. The preliminary hearing was held 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed media, curious onlookers, friends from my business community, and Vincent's family. Chloe sat beside me, holding my hand. Sharon Martinez sat on my other side, her presence reassuring. Marcus and Veronica sat at separate defense tables. Marcus wore an expensive suit and maintained an expression of wounded dignity. Veronica looked furious, her jaw clenched, her eyes hard. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Michael Torres, presented the evidence methodically. The modified HVAC system, the sealed vents, the fake carbon monoxide detector, my medical records showing co-poisoning, the financial records showing motive, the work orders signed by Marcus documenting his access to my home. Chloe testified first, walking the court through her discovery with technical precision. She explained exactly how the system had been modified, what it would do, how it would kill me. And when you found these modifications, what did you do? Torres asked. I got my grandmother out of that house immediately, because I knew if she stayed there one more night, she would die. Marcus's attorney, David Webb, cross-examined her aggressively. Isn't it true that you have a troubled relationship with your father? We haven't been close since he cheated on my mother and abandoned our family, Chloe said evenly. But that's not relevant to what I found in my grandmother's house. Isn't it true that you stand to benefit financially from your grandmother's estrangement from her son? That you're the alternate beneficiary of her estate? I'm not in Grandma's will at all, Chloe said. I have a trust fund for my grandfather that's completely separate. My father's arrest has no financial benefit to me whatsoever. But you'd benefit from maintaining your privileged relationship with your grandmother, wouldn't you? Sharon objected, and the judge sustained it. But Webb had planted the seed Chloe as the manipulative granddaughter. I testified next. I described my relationship with Marcus, his financial pressures, the months of him suggesting I was confused and incompetent, the offer to upgrade my HVAC system, my symptoms of CO poisoning. Did you give your son permission to modify your HVAC system in the way that was documented? Torres asked. No. He told me he was upgrading it for efficiency. I trusted him because he's my son and he's an HVAC engineer. I never imagined he would use that access to try to kill me. Do you believe your son intended to murder you? I looked at Marcus. He stared back, his expression blank. Yes, the evidence proves it. He spent months modifying my system to poison me, sealing my house so the carbon monoxide couldn't escape, installing a fake detector so I wouldn't be warned. If my granddaughter hadn't discovered it, I would be dead. Webb's cross-examination was brutal. Mrs. Harrison, you're 68 years old. Is it possible you simply misunderstood the work your son was doing? No, I said firmly. I have a business degree. I've managed properties for 40 years and I underwent a complete cognitive assessment that proves I'm fully competent. The only people claiming I'm incompetent are the ones who tried to kill me. Your son has suggested you've been experiencing memory problems, confusion. My son has been lying, I interrupted, building a narrative to explain my death when it happened, but it didn't happen because Chloe saved me. And now the truth is coming out. The medical evidence was damning. Dr. Lee testified about my cognitive assessment and the carbon monoxide in my blood. The fire marshal testified about the deliberate nature of the modifications. HVAC experts testified that the work Marcus had done violated every safety standard and could only have one purpose: to create a lethal environment. Then came the evidence about Melissa. Catherine Wells testified about her investigation into Melissa Harrison's death, the changed will, the suspicious timing, the evidence suggesting air embolism rather than natural aneurysm. We've petitioned to have Melissa Harrison's body exhumed for a new autopsy, Catherine said. The medical examiner will be specifically looking for evidence of air injection and foul play. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Marcus's face went pale. The financial evidence sealed it. Forensic accountant Rebecca Walsh walked the jury through Marcus and Veronica's desperate financial situation, the mounting debts, the pre-foreclosure, the history of living beyond their means, and the pattern every time Marcus had received a large sum of money from Melissa's insurance or other sources, he'd burned through it within 2 years and ended up more desperate than before. Marcus Harrison is a spendthrift who uses other people's money to maintain a lifestyle he couldn't afford, Walsh testified. When those sources run dry, he finds new sources. And when those sources won't cooperate, he eliminates them. Then came the most devastating evidence: text messages between Marcus and Veronica, recovered from their phones by digital forensics. Veronica to Marcus, 3 months before my escape. How much longer? I can't keep up this concerned daughter-in-law act. Marcus to Veronica. Few more weeks. System is almost ready. Just need to finish the vents. Veronica, and you're sure it will look like an accident? Marcus. Positive CO poisoning in elderly people happens all the time. With her confusion and memory problems documented, no one will question it. Just a tragic accident with a faulty furnace. Veronica, what about Chloe? Marcus, she's busy with school. By the time she notices anything, Mom will be gone. And we'll have everything. The text messages kept coming, each one more damning. Discussions about my estate, about life insurance, about how to spend the money once I was dead. Calculations of what they'd each inherit. Plans for the funeral. Veronica wanted it to be tasteful but not too expensive. They'd been planning my murder like it was a business transaction. Marcus's face remained expressionless as the messages were read, but I saw his hands clenching and unclenching under the table. Veronica looked furious, like she was angry at being caught rather than remorseful for what she'd done. The defense tried to argue that the messages were taken out of context, that the system referred to financial planning, that the concern about timing was about estate management, not murder. But combined with the physical evidence, the medical evidence, and the financial motive, it was clear what the messages really meant. At the end of 3 days of testimony, the judge ruled there was sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. Marcus and Veronica would face charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, elder abuse, and financial exploitation. Bail was set at $750,000 each. Neither could make it. They were remanded to custody pending trial. As they were led away in handcuffs, Marcus turned and looked at me one last time. His mask finally dropped completely, his face twisted with pure hatred. "You're pathetic," he said, his voice cold and hard. 68 years old, clinging to money you'll never spend, living in a house too big for you. You should have died. You've lived long enough. The bailiff pulled him away before I could respond, but his words echoed in my mind. You should have died. That's what my son thought of me. Not a person, not his mother, just an obstacle to money. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us, microphones thrust toward my face, cameras flashing. Mrs. Harrison, how do you feel about your son's arrest? Mrs. Harrison, did you suspect he was trying to kill you? Mrs. Harrison, will you forgive him if he's convicted? Sharon guided me through the crowd, but I stopped at the top of the courthouse steps and turned to face them. My son tried to murder me for my money, I said clearly. He spent months modifying my home to poison me with carbon monoxide. He created a narrative of my incompetence to explain my death. He planned my funeral before I was dead, and he showed no remorse when he was caught. That is who Marcus Harrison is. That is what greed did to my son. Will you forgive him? No, I said firmly. Some things are unforgivable. Attempting to murder your mother is one of them. We left through a side entrance, avoiding the rest of the press. In the car, Chloe finally broke down. I can't believe he said that to you, she sobbed. That you should have died? What kind of person says that to their mother? A person who's lost his humanity? I said quietly. A person who sees me as a dollar amount instead of a human being? I hate him, Chloe said fiercely. I hate what he's become. He's not my father anymore. No, I agreed. He's not. That night, back in our rental house, still could unbring myself to go back to the Sycamore Drive house. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of wine and thought about the little boy Marcus had been. Sweet, curious, bright. The child who'd brought me dandelions and drawn pictures of our family. The teenager who'd won science fairs and talked about using engineering to help people. The young man who'd married Melissa and held baby Chloe with such tenderness. Where had that person gone? When had greed replaced love? When had money become more important than life? I didn't have answers. Maybe there weren't any. Maybe some people just make choices that destroy who they were meant to be. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Marcus Harrison would pay for what he'd done. He would spend the rest of his life in prison for attempted murder. And if the investigation into Melissa's death proved what I suspected, he'd be charged with her murder too. Justice would be served, even if it broke my heart to see it happen. The trial began 4 months after Marcus and Veronica's arrest. The courtroom was packed every single day. This case had captured national attention. The son who tried to kill his mother for money, HVAC engineer accused of sophisticated murder plot, grandmother saved by heroic granddaughter. I sat in the front row every day. Chloe beside me, Sharon Martinez on my other side. Behind us sat Vincent's family, his sister Diane, his nephew Tom, his brother's widow Marie. They'd stood by me unwaveringly, horrified by Marcus's actions. Marcus and Veronica sat at separate defense tables, each with their own attorney. The prosecution's strategy was to try them together, showing the conspiracy between them. Their defense attorneys fought to separate the trials, arguing that they had conflicting defenses, but the judge denied the motion. Michael Torres's opening statement was devastating. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about greed, pure, calculated greed. Marcus Harrison and Veronica Harrison saw Marcus's mother, Barbara Harrison, not as a human being, not as family, but as an asset to be liquidated. She was worth $3.4 million alive. Dead, they would inherit everything. So they planned her murder with the cold efficiency of a business transaction. He walked the jury through the evidence: the modified HVAC system, the sealed vents, the fake detector, the text messages planning my death, the financial desperation, the pattern of Marcus receiving money from suspicious deaths. Marcus Harrison is not just attempting to murder his mother. The evidence will show that he has killed before, that his first wife, Melissa Harrison, died under suspicious circumstances just days before she could change her will to disinherit him, that Marcus has a pattern of targeting women close to him, waiting until they have maximum value to him, and then engineering their deaths to look like accidents. The defense attorneys objected repeatedly, but the judge allowed it. The pattern was relevant to proving intent. The trial lasted 5 weeks. 57 witnesses testified. Mountains of evidence were presented. Chloe testified about finding the modifications, her technical analysis of the system, her desperate race to save my life. She was brilliant on the stand, clear, precise, unshakable under cross-examination. I testified about my relationship with Marcus, the financial pressures, his campaign to paint me as incompetent. I described my symptoms of CO poisoning, my trust in my son, the betrayal of discovering he wanted me dead. Mrs. Harrison, Torres, asked gently, "Do you believe your son loves you?" I looked at Marcus. He stared back with empty eyes. "No," I said quietly. "I don't think he's capable of love anymore. I think greed has consumed everything else." The medical evidence was irrefutable. Dr. Lee testified about my perfect cognitive function and the CO poisoning in my blood. The fire marshal testified about the deliberate modifications. HVAC experts testified that the work could not possibly be accidental. The text messages between Marcus and Veronica were read in full. The jury heard them planning my death, discussing the inheritance, making plans for the money. Veronica's messages were particularly chilling. She complained about having to visit me, called me the old bat, and told Marcus to hurry up and finish the job.